notice the similarity between this. An innocent victim is bringing the removal of guilt from someone else. So here it's a goat, but then in the New Testament, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, it's Jesus. So it's funny how this was written hundreds of years ago, but it's the same concepts. This kind of suffering is called vicarious suffering. It's called suffering on the behalf of someone else. So which is what the goat did, and or the animal did, and which is what Jesus did. One more example here is found in Isaiah 53. I know I'm throwing a lot of Bible in. This talks more, Isaiah 53, verses, let me read it for you. It's 2 verse 8, or 2 through 8. He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance we should desire him. He was despised and he was rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. Like one from whom men hid their faces, he was despised. We esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. So that's Isaiah 2, Isaiah 53, 2 through 8. And let me kind of share how it's important. Again, this is the Old Testament. Again, this writing is hundreds and hundreds, I don't know how many years before Jesus comes into play. It almost seems though as this chapter talks about Jesus' last day on this earth, even though it was written way before her. The physical description of Jesus, here it says, there was no beauty or there was no majesty to attract us to him. He was like one from whom men hid their faces from, it's saying. When Jesus was accused of his before Pilate, he never opened his mouth. He left no descendants. He was cut off at a young age. At the prime of his life, he was killed. Jesus was pierced for our transgressions. Verses 4 and 5 are very important if you want to only get 2 verses of this. He was pierced for our transgressions. He takes on pain for the sake of others. His wounds make victory possible. Death seals triumph, a time where all that is wrong on earth will become right. Isaiah talks about, in chapters 52, the chapter before this, he talks about a suffering servant. Of course he's talking about Jesus, hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus even comes into play. The New Testament applies this to Jesus. Jesus identifies with our pain. He shares in our deprivation, and he suffers on our behalf. When Jesus died on the cross, his suffering and his death healed us of our sins, allowing us to live for righteousness. These are the passage in Leviticus and this chapter here in Isaiah are both kind of are showing why Jesus went through pain and the purpose of his pain. Jesus says he's been there, he's done that, he's gone through the pain, he understands what we're going through. Okay, I've talked for a little bit, so now I just want to tell you guys a story. Back in about 1980, the United States was having a presidential election. They were trying to vote for a new president.
1,000 people here this morning.
The president was Ronald Reagan. He's a pretty famous guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. But he was running for president, and he was going state to state to state to state. And he was trying to encourage people to vote. And he was talking about all these programs. He was talking about how he was going to give jobs to the younger people, how everything a president does to try to get the people to vote for him. He was trying to, anything that had to do with banks and anything that had to do with the younger people, he was talking about, and he was trying to encourage people to vote for him. And he was in one state, and an older lady came up to him, maybe a lady in her 70s, and the lady said to him, the president, she said, Mr. Reagan, you talked about all these great things you're going to do for the country, these things you're going to do for the younger people. But what about us? Us older folks, us grandparents, us senior citizens. You know, have you forgotten about us? And Ronald Reagan looked at her and he said, man, how could I forget one of you? You know, I am one of you. And he says this because he's one of the oldest presidents. So God has never forgotten about us, just like Ronald Reagan never forgot about older folks in the country. Jesus' coming to earth was God's way of saying, how can I forget you? I am one of you. Let's try to make Jesus' heart your heart. The suffering of Jesus should do more than just redeem us. It should transform us from the inside and out. Other people should be able to see that we're transformed. The compassion and suffering can help to give us insight. We can continue Jesus' mission. Let your heart be broken by the things that are broken by Jesus' heart. I just want to share a quote with you. It was by, not Miss Teresa, but Mother Teresa. The biggest disease today isn't cancer or leprosy. The biggest disease is the feeling of being uncared for or unwanted, of being deserted, being abandoned, being alone. The greatest evil is the lack of love and an indifference towards one's neighbor. An indifference towards one's neighbor who may be the victim of poverty, may be the victim of disease, and at the end of their life. So let's do something about people that are suffering, people that are in pain. Some examples I wrote down: befriending a widow, helping out a single parent who's overwhelmed, inviting friends to church that you can see are going through pain and need Jesus in their lives. Be motivated by pain. Learn from suffering. The goal of everything that God does in our lives and allows to happen in our world is to draw us into the conformity of Jesus Christ. So conformity is matching attitudes and beliefs and behaviors to fit in with a group. So let's try to match attitudes, let's try to match beliefs, let's try to match behaviors with Jesus Christ. Let me say that again. The goal of everything that God does in our lives and allows to happen in this world is to draw us into the conformity of Jesus Christ. God uses suffering to make us what we otherwise could not become. If you want, you can turn to 2 Corinthians 4.